For years, moving to Florida seemed like an easy decision. Pick a town, buy a home, and enjoy the lifestyle millions of people dreamed about. But after one of the biggest population booms in American history, Florida's housing map has started to split. Some communities are still attracting new residents, while others are facing a very different reality. Fewer buyers, rising costs, and longtime residents questioning whether staying still makes sense. The difference isn't the state itself, it's the town. Today we're looking at 10 Florida towns where the balance between affordability, growth, and quality of life is changing faster than many people expected, and why you should know this before buying a home or planning your move. Let's start the countdown. Palm Coast grew explosively during the pandemic, a planned community north of Daytona offering new construction and quiet neighborhoods at prices well under South Florida's, which is exactly what attracted so many buyers to begin with. That same rapid growth has become part of the problem. Builders have delivered new inventory fast enough to push active listings up more than 20% year over year. And specialist healthcare access has genuinely lagged the population boom. Residents with complex medical needs often still drive to Daytona Beach or Jacksonville for care that a city this size hasn't yet built the infrastructure to support. Insurance costs continue climbing across Flagler County in step with the rest of coastal Florida, and growing traffic on the city's main corridors reflects a road network still catching up to a population that expanded faster than anyone fully planned for. So why are some residents rethinking Palm Coast specifically? The original pitch was simple: new construction, quiet streets, and prices meaningfully below the coast. As that gap narrows and healthcare and traffic frustrations mount, some buyers who arrived expecting a finished, settled community are instead finding one still very much under construction, literally and figuratively. Who should still consider it? Buyers in good general health who are comfortable driving for specialized care and who specifically want new construction in a quieter environment than Florida's larger coastal metros. The value proposition here hasn't disappeared. It's just narrower than it looked in 2021. Casemi sits just 20 minutes from Walt Disney World. And for decades, that proximity has been both its defining asset and its growing liability. The tourism economy here has scaled dramatically. Casemi now has roughly 8,700 active short-term rental listings, more than double what existed just a few years ago. Entire subdivisions were built specifically for vacationers, with private pools and game rooms, competing directly with the housing supply available to the roughly 70,000 residents who actually live here year-round. Traffic along Highway 192 during spring break and holiday periods has become genuinely difficult, forcing longtime residents to plan errands around tourist season rather than their own schedules. Housing costs have climbed even as the median, around $382,000, remains below much of coastal Florida, squeezed by vacation rental investors competing for the same inventory as local families. So why are some people leaving? The tension is structural. Casemi is constantly negotiating between being a real town and being tourism infrastructure, and residents are the ones absorbing the friction every time those two identities collide during peak season. Who should still consider it? Buyers who specifically want proximity to the theme park economy for work or investment purposes, and who are prepared for the traffic and overcrowding that comes with living inside one of the busiest tourism corridors in the country. Daytona Beach built its identity on NASCAR, Bike Week, and a beachfront boardwalk that's drawn visitors for generations. But the city's broader economic story has grown more complicated in recent years. Home prices here tell a genuinely mixed story depending on the exact measurement. Some trackers show the median falling sharply, down over 27% year over year to around $268,000, while others place the broader metro's typical value closer to $306,000 to $345,000. Insurance costs vary enormously by exact location. A $600,000 oceanfront dwelling can run $5,400 to $10,800 or more annually, while some inland and condo-heavy pockets, thanks to a large retiree and seasonal owner population, have historically seen comparatively lower averages. Homes are sitting on the market for 87 to 100 days, notably longer than a year earlier, and sales volume has dropped substantially. What's driving people to leave? Daytona's downtown revitalization has moved more slowly than comparable Florida coastal cities, and the tourism economy here, built heavily around seasonal events like Bike Week and the Daytona 500, rather than year-round demand, creates income volatility for residents whose livelihoods depend on it. Neighborhood quality also varies significantly across the metro, with areas like Ormond Beach and Port Orange consistently outperforming parts of the urban core on safety and services. Who should still consider it? Buyers specifically drawn to motorsports culture and beachfront access at genuinely lower prices than Florida's more polished coastal markets, particularly those comfortable navigating a metro still working through uneven revitalization. Venice has long been a Gulf Coast retirement favorite. A walkable, historic downtown, genuinely strong healthcare access for its size, and a slower pace than nearby Sarasota. Insurance is the specific line item reshaping decisions here. Standard single-family coverage typically runs $3,000 to $7,000 a year, but older homes, and much of Venice Island's housing stock dates to the mid-20th century, can push combined wind and flood coverage past $10,000 annually. Industry data shows a home built in 1980 averaging $2,514 a year in premiums compared with just $1,611 for new construction, meaning the exact character-filled older homes that drew many retirees to Venice in the first place now carry a structural cost disadvantage that compounds every renewal cycle. So why are some retirees reconsidering Venice specifically? Rising maintenance costs on aging housing stock compound the insurance pressure, and healthcare demand, driven by Venice's large and growing retiree population, has begun to strain what was previously considered a genuine strength of the area. Who should still consider it? Retirees prioritizing walkability and established healthcare access who are willing to either choose newer construction in developments like nearby Welland Park or budget insurance costs at the higher end of the range from the start. Naples built its reputation on exactly what the postcards promise: white sand beaches, championship golf, and a genteel pace of life that made it a benchmark for luxury retirement. But the math has genuinely shifted. Median home prices run between roughly $679,000 and $699,000 depending on the source, with desirable gated neighborhoods starting around $1.1 million and running well past $3 million on the water. Carrying a $1.2 million Naples home means property taxes running roughly $8,500 a year after homestead, plus combined wind, hazard, and flood coverage commonly landing between $10,000 and $16,000 annually, a figure that's climbed faster than headline inflation for years running. Seasonal congestion during peak winter months has grown noticeably worse, according to longtime residents, even as healthcare quality, anchored by NCH Healthcare and a Cleveland Clinic Florida campus, remains genuinely excellent. Why are even affluent retirees rethinking Naples? Financial planners increasingly suggest $2.5 million or more in investable assets before Naples becomes financially comfortable rather than financially stretching, a threshold that's climbed meaningfully even for buyers who could have afforded the town's lifestyle a decade ago without a second thought. Who should still consider it? Retirees with substantial liquid assets who specifically want resort-caliber healthcare and amenities, and whose portfolios can absorb the carrying cost without eating into principal. Panama City's defining moment has a specific date, October 10, 2018, when Hurricane Michael made landfall nearby as a Category 5 storm, with winds exceeding 160 miles per hour. More than 8 years later, the recovery is still visible, new construction standing beside lots that were never rebuilt. The financial aftershocks have outlasted the physical ones. Bay County took out a $250 million recovery loan. Panama City borrowed $75 million more, and interest on those loans, not covered by FEMA reimbursement, falls on local taxpayers already dealing with rising insurance premiums following the storm's massive payout wave. Employment opportunities outside tourism and storm recovery work remain genuinely limited, and the area's seasonal economy leaves many residents financially exposed for roughly half the year. Why do people continue leaving Panama City years after the storm? It's less about any single event now and more about accumulated financial strain, insurance costs that never fully retreated, a tax burden still absorbing 2018's damage, and a job market that hasn't diversified fast enough to give residents alternatives to tourism's seasonal rhythm. Who should still consider it? Buyers comfortable with genuine hurricane risk who want meaningfully lower prices than comparable Gulf Coast markets, and who specifically value newer, code-compliant construction built or rebuilt to post-Michael standards. Cape Coral offered something almost unique in Florida. Canal front living with direct Gulf access at a price dramatically lower than Naples, just 20 minutes down the road. The oversupply here is real and well documented. Months of supply ran as high as 6 to 9 months in parts of the market before recently beginning to tighten, and new construction still makes up more than 30% of available inventory, with builders undercutting resale sellers through incentives that individual homeowners can't easily match. Many pandemic-era investors and short-term rental buyers who flocked here have already sold or are actively trying to exit, adding further supply to a market still working through absorption. Insurance premiums on canal front homes specifically have become a serious barrier, given the city's high flood and wind exposure, and canal maintenance costs, dredging, seawall repair, add a category of ongoing expense unique to this kind of waterfront living. Why are some residents and investors leaving? A homeowner who bought near the 2022 peak is often carrying both a home worth meaningfully less today and an insurance bill meaningfully higher than when they closed. A genuinely difficult combination that's pushing some owners, particularly investors without emotional attachment to the property, towards selling at a loss rather than waiting out the correction. Fort Myers has spent 3 years rebuilding since Hurricane Ian tore through the region in September 2022, and the recovery has genuinely reshaped who can afford to live here. Insurance now averages over $5,700 a year regionally, with flood coverage reaching $10,000 for some families. Costs that, according to a recent NPR investigation, are actively squeezing middle-class families who called this area home before the storm. To live comfortably in Fort Myers today, local relocation guides suggest a household income between $65,000 and $80,000, specifically to buffer against elevated insurance costs. The median home price sits between roughly $400,000 and $430,000, and the market has genuinely stabilized after the frantic bidding wars of 2021 and 2022. Inventory has rebuilt, and buyers can now take their time. Here's the trap. As Jackie Lizick, head of the Fort Myers Beach Chamber of Commerce, put it, Hurricane Ian didn't create gentrification in the area. It accelerated a process that was already underway. Older, more affordable homes were destroyed, and rebuilding to modern, storm-resilient state and federal codes costs meaningfully more than what was lost, pricing out many of the working and middle-class families, including small business owners, who defined the area's character before the storm. Who should still consider it? Buyers with the resources to build or buy new, code-compliant construction, and who specifically value Fort Myers' continued affordability advantage relative to Naples or Sarasota, even after accounting for elevated insurance. Punta Gorda built its reputation as a retirement haven. Historic waterfront charm, a walkable downtown, and canal communities that made it a magnet for buyers escaping colder states. The market here is absorbing a genuinely large amount of new supply. Charlotte County's inventory has been described as roughly double its long-term historical average, with homes now averaging 70 to over 100 days on market. Median sale prices for single-family homes run roughly $344,000 to $360,000, with some segments showing year-over-year declines as steep as 8 to 12%. Flood exposure is severe here. Nearly all properties in the city carry meaningful flood risk, and that geography, combined with the aftermath of Hurricane Ian passing directly through the city's eye in 2022, has kept insurance costs a central, ongoing conversation among residents. Why is the retirement market specifically cooling here? Punta Gorda's buyer pool skews older and more retirement-driven than almost any other town on this list, and that demographic is disproportionately sensitive to insurance costs and fixed incomes. After the historic run-up of 2021 and 2022, a lot of the easy appreciation has already happened, and new retirees weighing Punta Gorda against other Gulf Coast options are increasingly finding the math less compelling than it was even 3 years ago. Who should still consider it? Retirees specifically drawn to the boating lifestyle and historic downtown charm who buy newer, hardened construction. Punta Gorda's building codes, tightened after Hurricane Charlie in 2004, are among the strictest in the state, and who budget insurance realistically from the outset. Which brings us to our final entry. Arguably Florida's most desirable retirement city, and the one where too much success has become its own kind of problem. Sarasota has spent decades building a reputation as one of Florida's most desirable retirement destinations. Siesta Key's beaches routinely rank among the best in the country, the downtown arts district punches well above its size, and Sarasota Memorial Hospital carries genuine national standing. That very desirability is now part of the problem. Redfin data showed Sarasota's median home price sitting around $612,500 in late 2025, meaningfully below Naples but climbing every year a homeowner stays, which means property taxes rise in step whether or not a retiree's fixed income keeps pace. Insurance premiums have followed the same statewide trajectory, hitting every coastal county, and heavy seasonal tourist traffic during winter months has turned routine errands into planned expeditions for longtime residents who remember quieter years. Rapid growth throughout the broader region has changed the pace of daily life in ways many original retirees specifically moved here to avoid. So why are some longtime residents leaving the city that seemingly does everything right? Sarasota is increasingly marketed as Naples without the price tag, but that comparison undersells how far the underlying cost structure has moved. Waterfront and near-beach living specifically carries a premium that keeps compounding, and the rapid growth pulling in new residents and investment is, ironically, eroding the exact slower-paced lifestyle that built Sarasota's reputation in the first place. Who should still consider it? Retirees prioritizing top-tier healthcare access and cultural amenities, who are willing to live somewhat inland from the immediate coastline, where pricing pressure eases meaningfully compared to Siesta Key or downtown's waterfront core. The bigger lesson is that Florida has changed. A town that looked like a great place to live 5 years ago may not offer the same value today. Before you move, look beyond the house price. Check insurance, taxes, healthcare, traffic, and the actual cost of living. Because in today's Florida, choosing the right town can make all the difference. If you want more honest, data-driven videos about where to live in Florida, subscribe to MoveFlorida.